Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, you talk about a week of endless information here and a number of things that have transpired and are continuing to show themselves and expose themselves as to the fact that we are at war, that there are numerous movements taking place on a constant basis, and endless things are being exposed here, I think, that are beyond incredible and unavoidable. And it really is getting to a point where even the people on the so-called truth movement, as you've heard me call it, and other people call it, of course, and people on the right are even engaging in a level of cognitive dissonance here that is mind-blowing. Even they are getting left behind in the dust when it comes to all of this that's happening right now. So here's what I want to do. I want to go through some of the war-related things that are taking place here and have taken place this week. Some of the things, of course, that have been exposed that clearly show that there's way more going on than what we can imagine, and that there's certainly a plan in place here that has to do with the exposure of endless things, along with, again, a coordinated sting operation that's clearly going on. That, yes, there is a civil war as well, but also I want to spend the latter half of this episode specifically bringing up a school board that I've mentioned in the past and referenced with regularity in Central Ohio, in Westerville, Ohio specifically, and their latest board meeting and what actually happened in this board meeting. They had a board meeting on Tuesday, which, again, I'll get into this a little bit later, but it was flat out another example of the complete self-destruction of American education. Again, this business is crumbling to the ground, right in front of everyone's eyes, whether they know it or not, whether they want to admit it or not, because again, as I've said before, and as you know, the liberal snake eats its own tail. And these individuals as school board members and even the stupid citizens are all coming out now. They're coming out from the cracks, they're coming into the sunlight, and they are just cooking. And everybody's seeing them just cook. I mean, they're putting nails in their own coffins professionally, personally, and they're showing everybody how stupid they are. So I'm going to get into that, and I have audio to play with that as well, because a lot went on in this last meeting, as it was also the last board meeting of one of their retiring school board members, who was leaving, of course, because she's wrapped up in an alleged ethics violation, rather. But either way, as it turns out, she's not even the biggest problem. The problem is among the other board members, and it's far more insidious than one might imagine. So let me start here. First of all, the other day you may have heard that Kamala Harris in her campaign, allegedly, assuming that this is a real campaign and not coordinated by other people, let alone the good guys behind the scenes, who's to really know? But that she ended up putting out this letter allegedly written by a kid whose name in this letter happens to be Tucker. So a lot of people thought that it was a joke, or that Kamala Harris was so stupid that she would try to put together this letter that was from a Tucker Carlson or something along those lines. Anyway, Kamala Harris is portraying the letter as being written by a kid, a handwritten letter, and then, of course, in very quick order, endless anonymous individuals and even non-anonymous individuals took to AI systems and threw the letter into AI systems, and the AI systems said that it was a forgery, that the entire thing was fake, that it wasn't written by a kid, and it was completely fabricated in the whole thing. Now, this again lends itself to a couple of different trains of thought. I tend to believe both of them. They can both exist at the same time, I suppose. But number one, is she completely controlled to the point where she doesn't have any say in what actually goes out on her X account, and that other individuals, again, assuming that they're good guys behind the scenes controlling it, that they are the ones that are allowing this to happen in an effort to embarrass her and continue to show people that she is not who everybody thinks she is, and that this entire election season is not your average election season? It's highly possible, and I would certainly believe that that could be a scenario. There's also this one, which I, again, may have more weight to it even, that these people are just this stupid, that they're actually so stupid that they would actually put out some kind of a fake handwritten letter by a kid as if to play to children who can't vote, I guess, or parents who have children, or that all of the sudden, again, anybody would believe this at face value and be dumb enough to just believe it at face value, and then that would be it. Oh, look, a kid wrote a letter to Kamala Harris about gun control. Well, I'll vote for Kamala Harris because she was communicating with a kid on X, and that makes sense, and that's enough for me to sway the vote, and, that's enough for me to make my decision as to who to vote for. Again, they must be that stupid to think that someone would interpret all of that way and then just vote for her based on that. Again, it's completely careless. And again, did they not think that people wouldn't take that letter and run it through an AI system? That anybody out there wouldn't ask the question, hey, this looks fraudulent? I bet this was plagiarized. I bet this is completely computer generated. That they wouldn't even think that someone would even ask that question, let alone catch them. Again, they could be this stupid. It's highly possible. I mean, we know that they're dumb. We know that they're evil too, but I don't know. It's just amazing to me. I find this amazing. The other thing, of course, is this, which you've heard me bring this example up before, and it's continuing to make the rounds on a constant basis. All of the so-called vacations that Joe Biden has been taking, not just now after he's given up his position, which again, as I brought up on the show, he's not really the president anymore. Times two. He wasn't really the president in 2020. He is potentially just of a failed corporation called the United States of America, but at the exact same time, he's not really in charge, and he didn't really win the election. So it's multidimensional on that aspect, but just from a optics standpoint and a political campaign standpoint, if people are to believe that he is still the president or the acting president right now, why all of the footage of him at the beach sleeping? Again, you've heard me mention this, and I'm sure other people have too, but this right here should cause everybody to say, wait a minute. Maybe something else is going on here. Maybe there are things happening that we don't know anything about. Or maybe we do know what really is going on, but it's not what we're being shown. Because just from a political campaign standpoint, even if he's not running for president anymore, so to speak, that you wouldn't want footage of him, video, pictures, or otherwise, of him dead asleep with his head leaning backwards, with his mouth gaping open, in a sand chair, under an umbrella at the beach, just chilling, even with his shirt off. I mean, there's been ample footage of this as well. You would think, again, as a political game and as a campaign strategy, that would be a bad idea, that you wouldn't want to do that. You've heard me say this before. You've never seen Donald Trump soaking in the vitamin D outside with his shirt off at the beach. You've never even seen his wife in a bathing suit, let alone soaking up the vitamin D outside catching some rays. You've never seen any of that. There's a very good reason why that's the case. They know that it's bad optics. They know it would draw attention to the wrong thing. So, given that fact, and given the fact that that was really something that we never spent a whole lot of time seeing in the past, yeah, you saw it with the Obamas. You really didn't see it with the Bushes. You really didn't see it a whole lot with the Clintons. But even so, Joe Biden dead asleep on the beach with his mouth gaping open is embarrassing. And you would again think that they would say, okay, no more going to the beach. That if he's going to lie out outside, he's going to be in the privacy of his own backyard in one of his own homes, but not at the beach. And we're just going to, we're going to shield the cameras, and there won't be any drone footage, and there won't be any of that because this just looks too bad. This is just a bad political campaign idea. And the optics just look terrible. So keep your clothes on, Joe, and let's just go back home and, you can lie out and catch some rays in your backyard. It has to be coordinated. There have to be people around him completely controlling him. Again, we know the level of criminal that he is and his entire family. We know what they've done. You have to be dead asleep at the wheel to not know what they've done, which means there's no way that law enforcement hasn't gotten a hold of him or military isn't controlling some of this at some point. They have to be. It's too embarrassing. It looks too bad for the so-called Democrats. It's amazing. There's also this, of course, which again, well, I'll just revisit it very, very fast. It just should prove to people that the Q operation is real. It should prove that. It should prove that you are watching the systematic destruction of the old guard. Again, you would never see this kind of thing before in the past. If there was ever a political mistake that got made by a family or a party or something that was embarrassing, they immediately rectified it and they immediately reversed course and would say something like, okay, we're never going to do that again. We can't be seen doing that anymore, so we won't do that anymore because it's too embarrassing. They're not doing that. It's repetitive. It has to be controlled. You also have this, and this is where the cognitive dissonance is truly hitting next level, even among those in the so-called truth movement on the proverbial right. You have Donald Trump on a daily basis retruthing Q-related messages and Q-related memes on a constant basis, calling for more accountability of these criminals now more than ever. Yes, it's an election year. We get it. But even so, for anybody to say that that entire operation was fake or that the whole thing was some kind of a negative psychological operation, I'm telling you, these are the people that didn't read the posts, they didn't learn from any of it, they didn't connect dots in real time or even from a historic standpoint. They've got their head in the sand, and they don't want to think about it anymore. And I don't think he's using all of that, again, to just garner more of a vote. He already has the vote. He's already won. The only thing that steals this election is voter fraud. That's it. And there are ample illegal aliens who are going to be voting in this election. Which leads me to this now. Came across this post. Somebody threw this together. It may have been Wall Street Apes or some other individual associated with them. But it says this data is from the official website of the U.S. Social Security Administration. It says attempted voter registration in 2024 per state without proper ID so far this year. Now, before I read some of these highlighted states that clearly have the most, there are some that have a 0 next to them, and I don't believe this. Let's see. Virginia, apparently 0 individuals have attempted voter registration just this year alone without proper ID. I don't believe that. Same thing in Tennessee, Oklahoma, North Dakota, Kentucky, New Hampshire, New Mexico, Hawaii, Delaware. Again, I don't believe that. I think that there are ample individuals who have been registered to vote in all states, in every state, without proper ID. Again, regardless of the state. But clearly one of the higher states here where you have the most amount of basically illegals who have registered to vote without proper ID appears to be Missouri, with approximately 1,597,775 registrations without proper ID. Then you have Pennsylvania, which is 1.5 million. North Carolina, 363,000. Arizona, 1.2 million. Texas, 3.18 million. 3.108 million. California, 176,000. Colorado, 41,000 and change. Georgia, 241,000 and change. Illinois, 362,000 and change. Indiana, 165,717. So you have Alabama, which has a high number, Arizona, Texas, California, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, New York with 109,937, New Jersey, 158,000 and change. Let's see, Nevada, I said Missouri, of course, with 1.5 million, Minnesota, 25,000 and change, Kansas, 25,000 and change, Ohio, 33,000 and change, Rhode Island, 59,000 and change, and others, down into the tens of thousands, down to the singular thousands, with approximately a nationwide total of 9,664,301. And that's just so far this year, as of August 27th of this year. This number is increasing daily. Again, we're being flooded with illegal aliens. There is no doubt about it. Endless, ample footage of this taking place also. You have illegal gangs in Colorado, which are being called Venezuelan gangs. These individuals have guns, they have cell phones, they are coordinated, they're overtaking apartment complexes. You have littering, of course, that's taking place. There was ample footage in this giant parking lot one evening in Aurora, Colorado the other night of just trash everywhere from illegal aliens. You have the story here in San Diego where they allegedly tried to stop a school bus, and illegals trying to stop a school bus filled with children, and the superintendents come out and basically said, "Don't worry, your kids are safe, the buses won't stop. We're not going to stop for illegal migrants, or we're not going to stop for migrants and give them a lift. Don't worry, your kids are safe, you can return your kids back to school and you can keep riding the bus." And unfortunately, even in those situations, there will be ample and endless parents who will still put their kids on a bus to be sent down that exact same street or that exact same route where there were illegal aliens maybe banging on the side of the bus or saying, "Hey, stop," or even chasing the bus in order to get a lift, with nothing but children on board. Parents will still send their kids to those bus stops, on those buses, and into those schools. These are people who do not know that we are at war, that there is a war taking place. Saw more footage again of what appeared to be a 14 to 15-year-old white girl in the UK being beaten half to death by a mob of blacks, clearly illegals, and just wailing on her and throwing her around like a rag doll. Again, if you're out at night in this day and age, certainly in a foreign country that doesn't allow for weapons and or guns specifically, you're a fool. And you don't know that you're at war and that we as a world are at war. It is going to be natives versus illegals. That's the war taking place right now. The media can keep talking about it and use it for their local, evening news, whatever, broadcasts. And they can make money on these stories all they want, but eventually the dam is going to have to break here. Even they as newscasters are going to have to step aside and say, "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep reporting on these stories anymore," because all they're doing is reporting on our invasion. All they're doing is reporting on our country's destruction, which happens to be their country. You'd think they'd start to stand up a little bit, but again, they're controlled by the CIA. They're controlled by government. Every local news organization is just all scripted. They all get their memos in email form, and they all have to say the same thing every single time. And then they gloss over the story as quickly as possible, and then it's, on to the weather. But I'm telling you what, the war is just ramping up here. It's ramping up. Let me mention this particular post, too. This was in response to a post I made on greatawakening.win, which got a lot of play. Again, it had to do with the Arlington National Cemetery ceremony that took place over there, again proving that Donald Trump is really the commander-in-chief. And it said the following. Again, it was a nice summary of what's really happening here. They said, quote, "Let me attempt to give you guys a synopsis of what we are witnessing. The 2020 election was stolen with the help of foreign actors, so the regime that stole the election was classified as foreign occupiers of the White House. That's why there was a fence to keep them in as opposed to keep people out. The White Hats and Space Force, rather, allowed them to go in to the fenced, occupying area and sign off on the deal. Trump is the commander-in-chief of the United States military, who have pledged their oath against foreign and domestic. Executive orders were put in place to allow the continuity of government. Nothing can stop what's coming, but we need to wake up some people, unquote. Yes. Again, it's not that everybody has to know everything that's taking place, and we don't have to either, but we can connect very basic dots. If we're seeing more and more footage of illegal aliens doing what they're doing, if we're looking at the numbers and more illegal aliens are registering to vote, albeit, of course, illegally, and then at the exact same time you have the state of California, which is about to sign a bill into law that's basically going to open the door for illegals to vote there, when in fact we already know that they already are, so it's a bit redundant. But either way, they're going to have to steal the election. They're going to have to delay the election with some event, whatever it may be. They're just going to have to. And for what it's worth, I mean, I'm going to early vote. I'm not going to wait until election day to actually vote. Here in the state of Ohio, you can start early voting on machines if you want to, I believe the first week of October. So I'm not going to wait around for election day to do it. I don't have any real justification for doing that, I guess. I'm just going to do it and then sit back and just watch how everything else transpires. But again, when the time comes for you to vote, regardless of when you do it, because again, you may recall even Donald Trump was telling people, as was Kerry Lake, vote early. I mean, normally in the past, they haven't said that. They'll say, election day only, that's the way it has to be. But we've basically been given new orders here. And those new orders are vote. Just vote early, even if you, again, don't like voting early. Just get on the record and just flood the vote with legal votes. So that's what I plan on doing. But again, I'll certainly drive around on election day and take a look as to what's going on polling places and everything. And of course, we're a little ways away from all of this. But either way, I don't think we should be waiting until election day in case something happens between now and then. And certainly, if polls are packed to the gills on election day, I think that's the last thing you're going to want to find yourself in, is some kind of a line that's not moving, or you're at the end of a line and a machine breaks at the front of the line, and all of a sudden somebody comes out and says, "Sorry, everybody, the machine's broken, now you can't vote." So, yeah. Again, I want to see one day voting in the future, certainly with paper ballots. I think most people do, and make it a national holiday so people are off of work and people can, go throughout the entire course of the day and maybe open the polls a little bit earlier and leave them open a little bit later. But at the very least, it just needs to be one day and one day only. That's what I want to see in the future anyway, and I don't think I'm alone in that regard. So again, just kind of in summary here regarding a lot of this geopolitical stuff, of course, that's taking place in the war that is clearly at hand. I'm going to say it again. Make sure you carry a gun. You should have your head on a swivel and carrying a gun all of the time. Again, when you leave your residence, when you're going around, keep your head on a swivel, look around for groups of individuals, and just pay attention to your surroundings. Random attacks are only going to increase here in the future. They're already happening, so protect yourself, those around you, and yeah, be vigilant. Remain vigilant here. Okay. Education stuff. This week was an interesting week regarding stories for education and the ample evidence that it continues to collapse. Earlier this week, you may have heard of this completely unconstitutional bill that is about to go into place here, or law, I should say, that's about to go into place and be implemented, having to do with the state of Minnesota and Tim Walz, banning Christian teachers within all schools, apparently. It also bans Jews and Muslims, apparently. And again, it seems completely unconstitutional, and why such a thing would even become a law boggles the mind. So who exactly do you want to be school teachers then? Non-denomination individuals, or certainly individuals who aren't of a particular bloodline, I guess? Again, it's completely unconstitutional on its face. I don't see it lasting at all. And not to mention, again, as I just said, who on earth do you plan on hiring then for these positions? Trannies? Are these schools just going to be filled with non denominational trannies? Seems beyond strange to me. There was also this. This is from Fox Business. Home Depot partnered with the Human Rights Council last year on elementary school gender curriculum that taught kids about pansexuals. So, yeah, Home Depot announced one of its diversity partnerships, quote unquote, was the Human Rights Campaign's Welcoming Schools program, which is a program to educate students on transgender and LGBTQ terms. The Welcoming Schools program offers K-12 lesson plans and other LGBT resources on its website, which were available before Home Depot announced the partnership. Again, why is Home Depot participating in such a thing? Of course, it's the old, whatever that was, the ESG score, basically who can be more gay, that entire competition from a corporate level. Well, congratulations, Home Depot. I think you've taken home the trophy, certainly in this round. Again, it just blows me away that that people aren't paying attention to this complete corporate takeover and the ultimate gaying of everything that we're all experiencing here. There was also this is from NPR, and again, this particular story was making the rounds in a number of different outlets, but essentially this one is titled, American Public Schools Face an Existential Enrollment Crisis. I love this. You know that I love this. I hope you love this. This is amazing. And this is going to basically be the remainder of the episode here on this subject, and of course, the audio that I have to play from this school board meeting, which was next level nuts. But in this particular article, one of the authors who was spending some time, again, looking up New York State enrollment, here's what one of the individuals said. They said, quote, so Rochester just saw one of the biggest declines, really, of any city in the country. About a third of their students have left the district in the last 20 years, and that decline increased very sharply during the pandemic. Well, there was no pandemic, but you believed the lie, and people had had enough, so they left. They went on and said, and so they were faced with having to close a whole bunch of schools, and one of the schools they chose to close was school number 10, where I spent a lot of time talking with parents. They said it's a beautiful school in the middle of a working class, middle class, black neighborhood in southwest Rochester, New York. It's actually named after an elderly black research scientist who's sort of a figure of stature in the community. Well, whatever, doesn't matter. It says, but it was put on the list of 11 schools that were going to close in Rochester. 11 of the 34 schools in Rochester are going to be closed this past spring. I got to spend the last couple of days of the school year, at the school back in June, and people were really torn up about the school closing, even though the school, didn't score well in a lot of tests and didn't have a very good ranking. You just saw it in the last day of school, how beloved the school was, the shrieks of the students where their teachers were brought up by one by one for final farewell on the stage. Blah, 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 blah. So yeah, it's a lack of funding, it's poor test scores, they're filled with minorities, and you're out of money. They're probably loaded with violence at the exact same time, lack of attendance, you name it. High discipline numbers. I mean, I could go down the giant list, but you're very familiar with it. What's interesting about this, too, is that it's not just a low birth rate or, again, like I said earlier, poor scores, whatever else. These school districts and these schools are run by fools. They're run by fools. And these are liberal fools. And as I've said before, and you know this, you give a liberal enough rope, they'll hang themselves with it. Every single time. You give them so much responsibility because, let's face it, these school districts are multi-million-dollar corporations. And these people do not know how to run a multi-million-dollar corporation. As school board members, as administrators, they have no clue whatsoever. So what are they good at? They're good at, even though they're bad at it, trying to make levies for people to vote on in order to give them more state money. They're good at paying themselves under the table as much as humanly possible, reworking their contracts and doing what they can to advance themselves in any way and basically just steal from taxpayers. And then, of course, they're very good at not listening to the truth. And that when the truth actually sits in their lap and slaps them across the face, they will vote to get rid of that person, even though that's the person or a group of people that's trying to keep them above water and keep them from drowning. But it's over. It's completely over. These school districts have no idea what they're doing. They have no idea what they've done in the past. They believe way too many lies. And there isn't a business in the world that can survive continuing to believe things that are not real and operating in an unethical manner on a day in and day out basis, while at the exact same time claiming to be diverse, equitable, and inclusive, as they would even say. And then again, they're given enough rope, and then they show everybody that they are not diverse, equitable, or inclusive. And isn't that funny? Because these are the words that they didn't create because they're not smart enough. So they just are the NPCs who go along with this kind of verbiage. And then this verbiage, which is fake, they just use like it's real, not knowing it's fake, and then the whole thing explodes in their face, like an Acme cigar from Looney Tunes, and then they just go to light another one, and then they go to light another one, and pow, pow, pow. It just keeps blowing up right in their faces, and they have no idea that it's because they're completely manipulated. Now that leads me to this school board meeting. And I have to provide, again, just as a reminder, a little bit of a background on this school district. In Westerville, Ohio, the Westerville City School Board in this district is a large district. It's about, again, 3 high schools, many middle schools, even many more elementary schools. It's been around for a very long time, and it's grown over the years, and that's putting it mildly. With that said, the members of the board now are all women. They're all left-wing. They've had superintendents come and go for one reason or another. The superintendent who was there by the name of Dr. Kellogg, he left after the whole COVID lie because he saw the entire ship sinking. He was getting email after email from parents and unhappy people and a number of other things. And the last thing he probably wanted was to have individuals show up to the lectern during the public speaking comments and start tearing him open. The irony of all of this, too, is that during this entire time, and certainly since 2020, throughout the entire fake pandemic COVID lie, that very few, if any, parents got up and vocalized their displeasure with what was going on. Staff members certainly didn't, but parents certainly didn't either. In fact, I played some of that audio on this show in past years. Back during the COVID lie, and I remember it like it was yesterday, there was one mother who was a nurse who came up to the lectern during the public comments section, which again are stereotypically empty. I mean, there's no public comments whatsoever, but that's changed now. But either way, back then, She got up to the lectern and she started to let the board have it and the superintendent have it about her son's elementary school principal, who isolated her son because her son was taking the mask off of his face so that he could breathe. She started to cry when she was telling the story because she then said that her son came home that day and was told by the principal that if he doesn't wear his mask, he's going to get expelled. She, of course, leaned into the board and the superintendent and said, "No one has told me about my son potentially getting expelled for not wearing his mask. I was never told by any teacher. I was never told by any administrator. Was this an empty threat? What the hell is wrong with all of you?" And she was so angry, she was just sobbing at the lectern. That's the kind of people that are in charge of American children when you send them to these environments. These are not people who have your safety in their mind whatsoever, certainly not of children. That's why they always say the phrase over and over again, the safety of your kids is our number one concern. The reason they say that all the time is because they have to say it because it's the thing they never do. It's the thing they're not paying attention to. It's not that it's unmanageable. It very much is. But you can't manage the safety of anybody when you don't know what's really going on. Again, take the illegal aliens, just to digress here for a minute. Take the influx of illegal aliens and wanting and openly stating that you'd love to hire more non-white people, people of color, quote unquote. You can't make more of a reckless statement. That's not going to make any of these places more safe. They're not safe anyway. What makes anybody believe that these environments are going to become more safe with more brown people in them? It isn't. It won't. In particular, when they can't speak English and they're illegals. It continues to blow me away that parents continue to send their children to these kinds of places. But in this school district, again, just to review, there's so many moving parts right now with what's going on that back in the spring, they proposed a levy. And the treasurer looked at the board members, all women, and said, look, we're going to need a levy. There's nothing we can do. This has to happen. And then in the summer, which would have been, I believe, July, if I'm not mistaken, a month ago or so, they basically ended up voting for a levy and claiming that it was a hard decision and they didn't want to make it, but this is the way that it is. Because, again, instead of firing people, cutting loose administrators, eliminating programs, and lowering teacher pay to make ends meet, they just go to the taxpayers and assume that they're just going to pay for more taxes and more property taxes to benefit this entire shit show where they send their children to school. Again, beyond embarrassing, but this is the wavelength of thought of these people because they're not business owners, and if they are, they're terrible business owners. Because this isn't how you run a business. You don't just tax more people and then think that that's going to solve your problems. Again, large group of liberal women, by and large, who don't know the first thing about managing any kind of a multi-million-dollar corporation. They have too many contracts, they have too much wasted money, too much of everything in all the wrong directions. In fact, in this very board meeting, the treasurer openly admitted, and I laughed out loud when I heard it. I couldn't believe it, but I could. Because this right here is the end result, or one of the results, of what happens when you have your head completely in your ass. She openly stated that 1 year ago, this time, Westerville City Schools in Westerville, Ohio, had over $300,000 in donations alone. $300,000 in just donations. Guess how much money now, this year, by this month, they have in donations? $16,000. That's it. So in 1 year, they went from $300,000 in just donations from random donors to $16,000. That's the people voting with their feet. That's the people not wanting to give to them anymore. Now, what excuse would they make? Well, they would say inflation. Everybody's tightening their belts and tightening their wallets and they're saving money and we fully understand and blah, blah, blah. No. It's because of you. That's why. They're not giving you money because they don't want to give you money, because they see what you're doing. You're defending a lunatic minority who is fine going to the bathroom in whatever bathrooms they want, cutting off their genitals, waving rainbow flags, having trannies play in whatever sport they want to play in. And all you board members are just supporting it, all together. All agreeable liberal women. It's a nightmare. They're not a man on the board. There's not a man in sight. HR director is one of the weakest looking men I've ever seen. Some of these other men who get up there, they're all bootlickers. It's beyond pathetic. Now, let me ease into the most recent meeting because it was a doozy. You may have heard again, it was whatever it was, a couple of weeks back. I played audio from the board meeting where Nancy Nestor Baker, Dr. Nancy Nestor Baker, one of their board members, openly stated that she was resigning. To review, she's been pressured to resign because she's facing an ethics violation and an ethics investigation where she was voting for her own daughter to receive raises or different positions within the district. And she did it, I believe, on at least 2 or 3 occasions. And of course, you can't do that. Here's the kicker. No one told her that she couldn't do it, and she should have known she couldn't do it. But no one on the board, including the superintendents in the past, or the treasurer who still exists there now, or any board member, told her, you can't do this. Which means they all of them thought, that voting for a family member was okay. It wasn't that Nancy Nestor Baker was the only person who didn't think it wasn't a problem. It was that all of them didn't think it was a problem. But at least 2 board members, the board president, who has the last name Meyer, she's the current board president, and then another one with the last name Davidson, that these 2 individuals were probably responsible or partially responsible for filing an ethics violation against Nancy Nestor Baker, among perhaps other people. The point is the literal snake eats its own tail, and they always hang each other out to dry, all of the time, for one reason or another. Now, in this board meeting that took place this past Tuesday, the board president, who may have helped file the ethics violation against Nancy Nestor Baker, wasn't even there. And this board meeting was Nancy Nestor Baker's last board meeting. So in the last episode, or one of the last episodes, not the last one, but one of the previous ones where I covered the last board meeting, I openly said she'll give a speech. Nancy Nestor Baker will give a speech. They'll give her some kind of an award, and then that'll be that. That all happened. She gave a speech. She got a silver plate that was engraved. People applauded. Yay, congratulations. You've been here for 25 years serving as a board member off and on, and time to hit the bricks. She gives a quick little speech to a packed house, by the way, and then she sits down. And that's where I'm going to start the audio here. But what I want to do is before I start the audio, because the first person to come up to the lectern and spoke on behalf of Nancy Nestor Baker and went after the board. And it was interesting, and I'll play that in a second. But the remainder of the meeting had to do with the LifeWise program, which I brought up in a previous episode, which is a Christian program and a Bible study program that exists among elementary school students if elementary school students want to participate. Where in the middle of the day, those students are bused to a local church, they all wear the same t-shirt, they learn about God, and then they go back to school for the remainder of the day. And then they go home. I played audio in a previous episode from the last board meeting where it was filled with just lunatic gays, lesbians and left-wingers and all of it coming up and saying, I don't think that this program needs to exist, and what the hell's wrong with all of you for having this program, and blah, blah, blah. But this time around, in this last board meeting, the tables had turned. Supporters of the LifeWise program showed up and started to tell everybody what was really going on in these LifeWise programs and how beneficial they are for students. See this right here? This is what happens with diversity, equity, and inclusion. It doesn't really mean we are diverse, equitable, or inclusive. It means it's our way or the highway. If you want something done for you and we don't like it, then it won't exist. So what was going to happen at the end of this board meeting was they were supposed to make a vote as to whether or not the LifeWise program was going to continue to exist. At the end of the board meeting, they delay a vote brought by Mrs. Davidson, who's a complete psycho. And as a board member, and as a person probably too, but either way, she was the one who makes a motion to basically table the entire thing, thereby shutting down the LifeWise program for at least 2 weeks while their so-called lawyers look into whether or not the children need to be fed using school-related food funds, and then whether or not busing them there is a safe thing to do. They've had this LifeWise program now for almost 10 years. These two issues have never been a problem until now. So now they're using this as an excuse to get rid of the program, a Christian-based program in a public school system. Of course, a lot of people got up to the lectern and started yelling about church and state. They don't even know what that means. They've never read Thomas Jefferson and what he really meant by that, but with that aside, they just made themselves look like fools. But the individuals who didn't were the people who were in support of the LifeWise program. You had white individuals showing up and defending it. You had black individuals showing up and defending it. You had individuals of other denominations showing up and defending it. And then you basically just had liberals and gays on the other side of the room not defending it. So in summary here, before I play the audio, one of the things that you are seeing and one of the things that you are hearing in meetings like this, and it's all coming to the surface now, which is why this is all biblical, you are seeing how demonic the American K-12 school system is, whether that be public, private, or charter. It doesn't matter. You're seeing how demonic it is, and how demonic the people are who attend, and how demonic the people are who run it. This is the separation here, and there's no avoiding it. There's no going back. These board members, with their votes at the end of this, to table this entire motion, to basically delay making a vote on the LifeWise program, they just put the final nail in all of their coffins professionally. All of them. In fact, and this is a bit of a twist of events, Nancy Nestor Baker was the only board member present who voted to not delay the vote. She wanted to keep the program in place, probably. But she definitely didn't want to delay the vote for 2 weeks. She wanted to make the vote right then and there. And she was the only one who said no when it came to delaying the vote. Everybody else just went yes, yes, yes. And then the motion passed, and then that was it. So her last vote as a school board member was her actually being ethical, which was great. Good for you. Enjoy the rest of your life away from this shit show school district and these terrible, terrible people. You know, new boss, same as the old boss. They'll bring in somebody worse than you. But either way, in her last moment here, she actually made a good vote for a good thing, for a good reason. Now let me get into this audio here. Again, the first woman you're going to hear is an elderly woman who speaks after Nancy Nestor Baker gave her farewell speech. Thank you for blah, 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 and everything else. She got her silver plate. And then this woman comes up to the lectern to defend Nancy Nestor Baker while also going after some of the board members. It was well done. And she was rudely interrupted by one of the board members, too, who is Mrs. Altman, who is in my Deadpool because she's jabbed to the bone. Mrs. Altman, by the way, at the beginning of the public comments section, she openly looks at this giant list of names of all these people that are here to speak tonight or on this evening. And she says, okay, if everybody can keep their comments respectful and don't name call and don't single out anybody and don't do this and don't do that, basically violating everybody's constitutional rights. She also says, if you can, just agree with a previous speaker if you want. That way we can speed up the time and we can speed up the speeches. Everybody has 5 minutes, but if everybody takes 5 minutes, we're going to be here all night long and we don't want to do that and blah, blah, blah. Again, the board meeting lasted over 2.5 hours. But it doesn't matter how many people are there to speak. They're allowed to speak for the allotted time. So again, you can see just the dismissive behavior of these individuals. They don't care. They don't want to be told that they're wrong as board members. They don't want more knowledgeable people to come up to the lectern and lecture them about what is actually going on regardless of the specified issue at hand. Again, this should tell you how demonic these people are at face value. These people don't care. They also use the word kiddos all the time when it comes to children. It's so sad and pathetic. Well, we're just here for the kiddos, and we just want the kiddos and the kiddos and the kiddos. They're not your kids. You're a government. They aren't your children. So now here's the public comments section. It was amazing. This is the first woman you're going to hear. Again, this is the elderly woman who came to the defense of the outgoing board member who just got done giving her farewell speech. So give this woman a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you. I wasn't sure whether I'm appropriate for the number on the agenda, but the assistant superintendent told me I could talk. So I'm so happy to be here tonight, Dr. Baker, to honor you and to thank you for 25 years of service to the students and parents and staffs of Westerville City Schools. Your stamp is on every major success that the school district has achieved over the last 3 decades. 4 new school buildings, award-winning curricula, community cooperation, passage of levies, inspirational and motivational speeches to students and faculty, steering us through contentious redistricting. All of these were done under your watch. Most of them were a result of your leadership. Your legacy of success and dedication will be unmatched for many years to come. You and I have often disagreed on district issues, remember?
Yes, we do.
Sometimes vehemently, but never, ever, ever have I doubted your integrity and your commitment to the students of Westerville City Schools. I have always viewed your actions, and I have viewed all of them, to be ethical and intelligent. Now, here it comes. Knowing all of this, imagine my shock as I watched the school board meeting last year when 2 school board members stared at you with oh so selfish righteousness and indignation as they accused you of being unethical. And good Lord, they even implied she committed a felony. A felony. I have observed and been active with many school boards over the years, and I will tell you that I have never heard anything more stupid at a school board meeting.
So, Ms. McGold, I'm just going to remind you.
I didn't mention any names.
No, I know. Just,
Well,
appropriate language and not name calling.
I didn't mention any names.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now I lost my place. Well, I'm going to continue. Okay. As I watched the video of the meeting, I realized it was not only what I've previously said. I believe it was vindictive. I believe it was mean. I had always hoped that Westerville would not be touched by the malevolent environment that has seeped through political discourse, but that school board meeting showed me that we are not above that evil fray. Just to be clear, for those who may not have been aware, Dr. Baker cast a yes vote for contracts awarded to a list of people. As it happened, a family member was on that list. The motion passed unanimously. That means that Dr. Baker's vote had no bearing on the outcome. It would have passed without her vote. Only takes 3 votes. There were 5. And yet, despite Dr. Baker's 25 years of service without scandal or a hint of unethical behavior, despite the fact that her vote had no bearing on the outcome of the contracts, some members of the board decided to go after her, and they filed a breach of ethics complaint with the State Board of Ethics and made sure that news venues covered the story to include the possible and ridiculous accusation of felony. And how did you handle this situation, Dr. Baker? You handled it like you have handled every single conflict and issue that you have come across in the past 25 years. You handled it with grace and dignity. You spent your past year as a board member doing what you have always done, working endlessly for the betterment of Westerville schools. I took a look at your Facebook page and began to read the hundreds of people who expressed their gratitude. One of them stood out, and I'd like to read that. Dear Nancy, I don't know of anyone who so exemplifies the spirit of Westerville as you have for these many years. You have given selflessly to not only our kids through our schools, but our entire community. And we are a better city because of you. I don't know of anyone who so deserves to retire knowing you did a job well done. And I also don't know of anyone who will be missed more. I joined, Nancy, with the hundreds of people who have messaged you, with the many people here tonight, and the thousands, not hundreds, thousands of people who have voted for you and placed their trust in you throughout the years. We know you, we appreciate you, and we acknowledge the outstanding legacy of success and dedication you have achieved. Thank you, Nancy Nestor Baker, for your impeccable, ethical behavior and contributions to Westerville City Schools.
And there was a smattering of applause, and there you go. Again, even she's a blowhard, okay? Even the entire thing is a complete charade. It doesn't matter. The fact is that in that scenario, from years past, if endless other people or anyone else on the board or the superintendent or the treasurer didn't tell one another as an entire board that you can't vote for family members, then that means that none of them knew that you couldn't. But someone probably alerted them to the fact that Nancy Nestor Baker had in fact voted for her daughter to receive raises or get a change of position or whatever it was. And then they said, hey, look, you need to get rid of her, file an ethics violation because you have a responsibility to do this and you need to get rid of her now. And so they did. And I remember that meeting because it took place in like a broom closet. It was an emergency meeting where they retroactively re-voted. She abstained from the votes. And then two of the board members spoke up and were like, well, we're glad that this happened and we need to be ethical here and everybody needs to be ethical because that's what we care about and the public has a right to know. The two board members, Davidson and Meyer, outed themselves as being the people who, at the very least, were some of the people who filed the ethics violation. But again, it doesn't matter if it passed or, if the motion for those votes was going to pass with a 3 to 1 or a 4-1 vote, and it still would have passed. None of that's relevant. The fact is that they're all stupid. That none of them told one another as board members that you can't do this. So yeah, it is sort of this holier than thou attitude that they now all have, like, well, we don't do anything wrong here, and we do all the right things except for this woman who's now resigning. That's not true. They're all idiots. It's amazing. Not to mention all of the so-called accomplishments that she said Nancy Nestor Baker had. That's all subjective. No one cares about new school buildings, really. What award-winning curriculum are you talking about? It's all lies. It's all lies. Nothing's really improved over the years. Everything's just gotten worse. That's all. It's every school district in America. That's the way that it operates. But again, they have to, they have to rub elbows and they have to lick each other's boots and they have to kiss up to each other and brown-nose one another as much as humanly possible, even at the end, to make it sound like school board members are somehow responsible for something. The best thing a school board member can do, ethically speaking, and the largest accomplishment that a school board member can do, is keeping their budget in the black, firing criminals, and that's really about it, and keeping children safe in these environments. Those three things are about all they have to do. They're not there to be politicians. They're not there to be ideologues. They're not there to, perpetuate the latest flavor of the month politically, whatever that may be. That's not their job. But they all think that it is. They actually are so stupid that they believe that they are somehow the better parents of these children than their actual parents. This is, again, how self-absorbed these people are and delusional they are. And they are delusional. Now here's the next comment from the public comments section. And I want to play this before I get to the LifeWise stuff because this is absolutely fantastic. And I'm playing him out of order because there were other people coming up to the lectern talking about the LifeWise Christian program, wanting to keep it, not wanting to keep it, the debate back and forth. You'll recall this guy because this is the guy whose audio I played it in a previous episode from their last board meeting, who read them the riot act, rather, regarding their budgetary situation and how the levy isn't going to pass and you're completely screwed and you have no idea what you're doing, and I'm working with corporations who aren't going to vote for you and your levy will fail and this, that, and the other. This guy was in this meeting again. He comes up to the lectern and he goes, I'm not here to talk about LifeWise, but I am here to talk about the levy and your budget. And then he just tears into him again. So I'm going to play him right now. I like this guy. He's the best. Give him a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you. I'll give you a little break. I'm not going to talk about LifeWise, so either way. But I am going to talk about the levy that's coming up, which I'm sure is near and dear to everybody's heart. I am going to say I'm disappointed, not unexpectedly, but nothing's changed in terms of redoing the projections or transferring back the $30 million back to the general operating fund. All that based on student population is down, revenue is up. This levy is asking for a 16% increase in our school property taxes, a 34% increase in salaries, a 57% increase in benefits, on top of the highest inflation, the highest interest rates. Seniors that can't afford to live in the houses that they're going to be asked to spend even more on public schools. I like public schools. I'm a fan of public schools. But to me, this one goes way beyond where it needs to be. If the projections were revised down to what the union contracts are currently enforced for at approximately 3% increases with benefits, that's fine. Nobody has to lose a job, but I think the projections need to come down, transfer back the $30 million, and we can use that in the operating fund to fund the school system. Unfortunately, because the $30 million has not been transferred back, I've opened up conversations with my state legislators about closing the loophole on being able to transfer money from the general operating fund to the capital fund. I think it's a loophole that needs to be closed. It's received a warm reception, and it's going to be another one of those things where Westerville is going to lead. But I think in the end, I hope that we close that loophole and any other transferring that's allowed to take place, because I think it's wrong. I think when we vote for a levy to be spent in a certain area, it should be spent there. It shouldn't be transferred when it's convenient and you want to make a change. So I'm just going to state the facts. That's what I'm working on, and I'm going to work real hard to get that changed. On top of, we've now formed a nice little group to oppose the levy, to defeat the levy. And I know the battle has begun, which is fine, but let's just keep it civil, and I will see you at the next meeting. Thanks for your time.
I like that guy. I like him. He's objective. He's providing them solutions to their problems that they created and they don't even know a way out of it. And he's showing up as an average citizen going, I can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. I know how this can get fixed, and you're not considering any of this, and you're not working with the people. So I'll keep showing up and I'll keep telling you what the answer is, and if you don't fix it, well, you're just a bunch of dumbasses, and that's the way that it's going to be. I love it. It's perfect. See, this is the oversight that government doesn't like. They don't like being told that your average citizen knows more about a particular thing than they do. And that's always the case. They're outnumbered. There's always more of us than there are of them. There's no way that they can sit there behind a table, make votes on particular things, and pretend for the rest of their lives that they know what's really going on. I mean, they're all Kamala Harris. They're all just pretending. They're pretending to be knowledgeable on subjects they know nothing about. I love it. So good for him. I'm going to keep playing his audio throughout this election year, certainly throughout the upcoming levy in November. It's just too good. It's too good. Okay, now on to the LifeWise stuff. Again, as a refresher, the LifeWise program is a Christian program. It's a Bible study program that, again, is designed to instruct individuals who have a Christian background or are Christians. It's a volunteer program, and the children can opt out of it. They don't have to go. The parents can sign an opt-out form where they don't get on the bus, they don't drive to a church with the other LifeWise participants. That's the way that it is. So what you end up having, really, is a group of parents whose children don't participate complaining about the fact that a group exists that other children are participating in, but they have an opinion about the program and they just don't like it. So they mischaracterize it. They call it violent. They say it's discriminatory. It says that all gays are going to go to hell and this, that, and the other. Which is why, again, in the last board meeting that they had at the beginning of the month, all the whack jobs came out and were completely against it. Well, that still happened in this one. But what I want to do now is I want to play some of the positive comments from supporters of LifeWise because there were many of them. In fact, like I said earlier, these individuals supporting LifeWise were black, white, some appeared to potentially be gay. Some of them were the director of LifeWise as a program even in other towns and other areas of the state. An assistant director of LifeWise was there who openly spoke and said that the entire thing's being mischaracterized. Again, you had volunteers of LifeWise show up and say, I've been volunteering at LifeWise. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a great program and we don't hurt anybody. In fact, the entire thing is the definition of your so-called inclusion, diversity, and equity, and blah, blah, blah. That we actually exemplify all of that. They brought up, very personal stories of handicapped children feeling like they're finally a part of something because they're not a part of it in a school environment. And what this entire thing also proved, ladies and gentlemen, which is absolutely huge, and it shouldn't surprise any of you, is that a program like LifeWise or programs like it that are centered on God and put all of these children, regardless of where they come from first, through the eyes of God, that programs like this are more morally sound than your American K-12 public school system. It's that simple. It was an open admission that whatever is going on inside of the school buildings isn't working, and that what goes on outside of the school system is working. So it too, without these people really knowing it, although one woman knows it because even she said that she was homeschooled as a child and she's homeschooled her children also, and they're healthy, productive, morally sound human beings. But it's an open admission that the school system, that the American public school system is demonic, that it is violent, that it is divisive. They can use all the words and catchphrases and acronyms they want. It doesn't change reality. But what, again, is more healthy for these children is a God-centered environment, which we know the public school system is not. So let me play just a few of these individuals who spoke on behalf of LifeWise because, again, it was fantastic. So here's this first individual, again, advocating for LifeWise. It was a very well-done speech. In fact, it was one of the better ones, in my opinion. So give this woman a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Jury, and my family and I have lived in Westerville for almost 15 years. I have a bachelor's degree in education, and I served in Westerville City Schools for several years as a substitute teacher, state testing facilitator, and student success coach before accepting my current role as the program director for LifeWise here in Westerville. I'd like to address several points of misinformation and some misconceptions about LifeWise that have been stated by members of the public in this and the most recent board meeting on August 12th. I'd also like to note that all the points you've heard were from those without an actual student in LifeWise programming or any personal firsthand experience with the program itself. It has been said that programs like LifeWise violate the separation of church and state, and I won't belabor that point because, as you've heard, LifeWise Westerville has operated for the past 2 years in legal compliance with the RTRI policies of our district. And despite what alarmists on social media would have us believe, RTRI is neither new nor controversial in Ohio, and 75% of all school districts in the state have an RTRI policy in place. Students' expressions of faith at school are safeguarded by the First Amendment. In fact, while I was employed in Westerville City Schools, I commonly saw students' religious beliefs and practices being respectfully accommodated in the school building during the school day without any controversy or questions from the community. For example, during the roughly 30 days of Ramadan, special accommodations were made for students who wished to practice their religious observances during their lunch or music classes. Similarly, any students enrolled by their parents in LifeWise classes this year will attend roughly 30 lessons, but outside of the school building during their lunch to participate in religious conversations and activities. They will not miss any instructional time at school, and they'll be engaged in activities that support their family's religious education choices. I'm confused why there's any question about whether all students and all families should be afforded such a choice. It has been said that LifeWise is an extremist organization with a hidden political agenda. Word choices like these incite fear and unwanted division in our school community. LifeWise is very transparent about what we teach and why we teach it. We have no political agenda. It's been said that LifeWise students are prone to bullying or shaming of peers from non-religious or non-traditional families. This flies in the face of everything LifeWise values. We agree that if there were incidents of bullying that occurred, it would be imperative that those be addressed. What I'm having trouble figuring out, though, is the fact that our LifeWise Westerville program did not receive a single email or phone call regarding any bullying incidents this past school year. Either they weren't reported by a parent or a principal, or they didn't actually happen. Of course, we know that bullying is different from peer-to-peer conversation. As noted earlier, students have the right to engage in conversations with their friends regarding their faith. At all times, the tone taught and modeled in the LifeWise classroom is always one of extending love and respect to all people. In regard for the concerns that students sometimes enthusiastically share invitations with their peers to attend LifeWise or talk about the things that they've learned in our classroom, we've decided this year to discontinue using any paper handouts or invitations for our students, and so nothing will be sent home with the students when they return. Our gospel-centered, character-focused LifeWise curriculum is fully accessible for public review on our website, or we invite anyone to contact us anytime to schedule a visit in our classroom or come and talk to us about what's being taught. I'd also like to point out that LGBTQIA+ topics have never been part of our LifeWise curriculum, and all students are welcome to be enrolled in LifeWise classes. Last week, the father of two Hanby students who attended LifeWise last year asked me why LifeWise is suddenly being portrayed as controversial. He told me that every week he read the emails we sent out outlining his children's lesson content and talked with his children about what they had learned in LifeWise. Based on what he saw and heard, he considers LifeWise to be a group of people that love Jesus and want to teach kids good character. He's right. We love Jesus and we love the gospel, the good news that through Jesus, we have access to a free gift of eternal life and a restored relationship with God. And because of this, we want to teach kids good character. In light of these facts, which I'm also going to share with you via handout, I'd like to invite you to please consider only what is true about LifeWise. Thank you again for your time.
And just like that, you had the director of LifeWise in that town, in that city, completely destroy everybody who is speaking out against it. And the applause that you heard in the middle was from the whack jobs on the left, the satanic, demonic goons who didn't want LifeWise students and LifeWise participants handing out an invitation form to other children who don't know anything about it in school. Because you have to remember that it's these demonic individuals who believe that their children are being bullied in school by LifeWise students and by LifeWise participants, and having this Christian faith and Jesus thrust into their faces all of the time, like it's a bad thing, or like they're being bullied for not going. Again, she cut them down. She cut them all down, one after the other. We haven't had parental complaints There's no proof that a particular allegation took place because no one's made such an allegation. Bullying happens and it's unfortunate, but having an open conversation with a student is not bullying. That's true. But not among the whack job left-wingers who think that if you have a conversation about something that goes against what that particular individual believes to be true or thinks is true, then all of a sudden it's not that the other person is right about anything, it's that you, as the listener, are being bullied. This is the fragility of these younger generations who can't even have a basic conversation, nor recognize tone of voice, nor recognize anything else. They're completely irrational, totally illogical. Now, I would take it a step further, to be honest. And again, it was an excellent speech. She's 100% right. She knocked it out of the park. But I would take this a step further. If I was LifeWise, and I wanted to twist the metaphorical knife, all LifeWise would have to do is become their own school. That's it. That's all that would have to happen. LifeWise would put out an invitation to all of their participants through the students who participate, thereby going back to their parents and saying, LifeWise has made the decision now that we are going to be our own school, our own full-time school. It may not last all day long. It may just be for 4+ hours a day. We'll teach them reading, writing, arithmetic, Bible study, and then everybody can go home. I bet you would have parents pay into that. And what would it do for Westerville? It would bankrupt them. They would lose a massive amount of students. A massive amount. Unenrollment would skyrocket. They could really make them pay if they really wanted to. Because let's think about it. That's really what's going on here, isn't it? A Christian program and the participants within that program have just proven, via the actions of the exact opposite, the demonic left whack jobs, they've just proven that they are a healthier environment for children than the actual K-12 brick-and-mortar public school itself, the one that they're still affiliating with and associating with. So since you've just proven that beyond a reasonable doubt, why wouldn't you just restructure the LifeWise program into being your own private school? You could call it LifeWise Academy. And then you're off and running. You could do it for pay. Hell, it's already volunteer-based by and large, but you could do it for pay. You could still have other volunteers. And remember, the left wing always uses this as an excuse. They always say, well, people instructing these children, they don't have degrees, and there's no background checks, and who's to say that they're an appropriate instructor and have the necessary education? You don't have to. You don't have to. This is what people who are slave to governments actually believe when it comes to learning information. That you have to learn it from someone who has degrees. You have to be shitting me. That's why they hate the family structure. That's why they hate parents. That's why government and the people who work within hate parents. Because they don't think that parents know enough to teach their own children, let alone a Christian organization knows enough on what the needs of these kiddos are, quote unquote. This is the Civil War. It's right here. It's a big deal. But what this whole board meeting proved was that you don't need American K-12 schools for anything. They invite division and then make excuses as to why they're divisive, or ignore their own divisive nature and blame everybody else for being divisive. They're illogical, they're irrational, they're unsafe. They cover each other's tracks. This is what criminal organizations do, because they're a criminal organization. They delete referrals. They downplay violence. They make everything look rosy and joyful and everything's happy and we're successful and we care about everybody, when clearly they don't. They're catering to the satanic, demonic minority at the expense of children and their families. And they're not hiding it. They're doing it in the open. They are not unique in this regard. This is only one major school district, population-wise, in Ohio. This is happening everywhere, in every school district. Now what I want to do is toward the end, I'm skipping all of the other presentations that were, completely irrational because you heard them in a previous episode. But there was one funny interaction which I'll just describe, and then I'll play some audio from them actually delaying the vote, which was funny. There was another interaction during the public comment section where what appeared to be a flamboyantly gay man gets up to the lectern to bash, more specifically, the LifeWise consent form. And he basically says nowhere in the consent form does it talk about safety. So if someone gets hurt, who's responsible for that? He's basically like threatening the school district as if to say, if you don't get rid of LifeWise, you could be on the hook for children getting hurt at LifeWise. So then he gets a round of applause from the gays in the room. And then the next guy who comes up, it was perfect. He goes, "Hi, my name's so-and-so. I'm a lawyer. And as it turns out, that's not what waivers are. And that's not what a consent form is. A consent form is that you're consenting to whatever happens in that environment, that it is the fault of the parent if something bad happens, and that you can't hold anybody legally responsible for what happened because you signed off on it and the responsibility lies with you, the parent." And then it was crickets. And then he says, and oh, by the way, isn't that what parents are supposed to do? Aren't parents supposed to be responsible for the safety of their children? So if parents don't think that a particular thing is safe, why would they send them in the first place? He goes, so yeah, that's not what those forms are designed to do, because I'm a lawyer and I know this. That was the end of his talk, and then he walked away. He destroyed this gay dude's approach on what consent forms and waiver forms actually mean. It was beautiful. And then the guy just, again, you could see him on camera, he just slunk down in his chair like, oh God, like, he just made me look like a complete idiot. Because you are. I mean, imagine that. A person walking up to a lectern on YouTube in a public forum not knowing what a waiver form is, not knowing what a consent form is, and then trying to bend it to make it look like the school district could get sued if someone was abused or if someone was injured. That's not how it works. That's the point of a consent form. Anybody who's ever played sports knows that. You sign off on a consent form. If your leg gets broken, you can't sue the school. If you get a concussion, you can't sue the school. You're signing off on, this is what could happen. Something could happen here. I mean, it's amazing. The stupidity of these people is astounding, but they're telling everybody how dumb they are. So, at the end of the meeting, and in conclusion here, instead of them doing the thing that they were immediately set to do and set to vote on, was whether to keep it or get rid of it. They typically will make this move, as school districts across the United States will, which is they will delay the vote in the effort of, quote unquote, gaining more information, when really they're just manipulating everybody. And they're being the cowards that they are and telling everybody that they're cowards. And Mrs. Davidson, who is an abomination on the board, you'll hear her say, well, I have concerns about lawyers and safety and food and who's getting what and whether or not we're supposed to provide this, that, or the other. And I just want to hear back from the lawyer, and that's going to take time. And then Nancy Nestor Baker gives her 2 cents, and then they're at each other's throats just briefly. But here's what transpired in that entire thing. Once the public comments section was over and they were ready to vote, give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you for your comments. And so at this point, we move on to 13 board comments, 13.01. Do we have any board comments this evening?
I do, and I can go first. I'm going to ask everyone, I move that we amend the agenda to consider a motion to suspend board policy 5223, absences for religious instruction, until the next meeting of the board.
Okay, so we would need a second.
Second.
Any comment or conversation, or should we just move to a vote?
I think we ought to say why.
Just to change the agenda so I can make a motion for something else. That's
Okay.
what. Yep.
It's just for the agenda change?
Yep.
This is just the agenda.
The order of
change, just to be
business may
clear.
be altered and the items added at a regular board meeting by the majority vote of the members present.
Okay,
Ready to
please
vote
call the
on
vote. Yeah,
amending
This
the
is on the
agenda?
agenda change.
That's correct.
Amending the agenda. Okay. Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
Yes.
Mrs. Altman?
yes.
Thank you. And then secondly, I move that the board suspend board policy 5223, absences for religious instruction, until the next meeting of the board. I'm saying this for some compelling reasons. First, we've received new guidance from the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce that we cannot provide meals purchased or free and reduced lunch for our students to consume off-site part of any program. Also, the administration is working through some issues to determine if LifeWise program meets all of the requirements included in our policy, as well as the statute that allows release time for religious instruction. Okay.
So that
Mrs.
was the-
Davidson, sorry, could I just clarify the guidance that we received was that it has to be curricular related for school programming?
Thank you.
And so that was the motion.
Yep.
We would need a second.
Can I talk? Want to make a second?
So
You
we
make
can make a
for
second
that?
and then we can open,
Okay.
yeah,
Second.
okay. And then we can have conversation now, right, yeah. Please, if you had that.
No, I just joined the board in January, was not here for RTRI implementation or the start of LifeWise. But based on conversations that we have had, new information, like you mentioned about USDA that has been brought to our attention, I do have some outstanding questions. And the more that I've learned about the RTRI policy and LifeWise, I don't believe that it would be prudent for us to proceed without more information. We need to cross the T's, dot the I's. And this is true for any religious group. This is not, LifeWise just happens to be the one that we're talking about right now. I personally don't care if you're a Christian, Muslim, Hindu, or you pray to the dust bunny under your fridge. I do not care. You do you. But we as a board have to make sure that any coordination is going to be safe and compliant for the sake of the students, the parents, the district. And unlike other kind of camps or extracurriculars, this does happen in the middle of a school day and not after. So there's some extra emphasis here on making sure that we get it right. So.
Other comments?
So let's be really clear about what suspending the policy means. So if we suspend the policy, then we are saying that LifeWise will not be conducting its program at this point in time. Is that correct?
Correct.
I just want to make sure that we're really clear so that everybody understands
Mhm.
what's on the table. So the issue is to...
Hey, Nancy, can you turn your mic on?
Oh,
The green light is not lit. I'm sorry about that. What I was asking was what suspending the policy, what it would mean for LifeWise if we suspended the policy. And we are only permitted, as I understand it, to suspend a policy for the space of one board meeting.
Correct.
So suspending a policy doesn't mean that you suspend a policy ad infinitum. It has a very strict time limit. That's one piece. Piece number two then is if the board were to vote to suspend a policy, and we have voted to suspend other policies in the past. If we were to vote to suspend this policy for the time period of one meeting, during that time period, LifeWise would not be permitted to operate its program in the school. Correct?
Correct.
So that's what is on the table for discussion. So as I understand it, I think I understand correctly, we are looking predominantly at two areas of legal compliance. One deals with food service, correct? The other deals with waivers, correct?
Those are two, but there could be more. Yes.
Those are the two that we are aware of at this point in time, right? So what suspending a policy for the space of one meeting would do would be to provide a 2-week time period during which those issues would be resolved, because the policy would then come back into effect at the next meeting, correct?
I think we would come back with some more information to be able to make a better decision.
Yeah, but if we could only suspend for one meeting, then the policy goes back into effect.
Unless we would suspend it again, correct?
Multiple suspensions.
No, I'm not saying that's going to happen.
I know,
I'm
I
just saying
never
that
thought about that.
we need time to get our ducks in a row and continue to talk to our attorneys and make sure the kiddos that we are responsible for are being fed and are safe. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody on either side of the question would disagree with the need for the children to be well cared for and safe. But what I do wonder is what the impact is in doing this on the LifeWise program, setting aside the issues that we do need to look at. We need to consider those issues. What is the impact on the program? I do not know. Does anybody have thoughts about that? Angie?
I would say that if the policy isn't in existence, they would not have excused absences for the religious instruction. And I think the parents would have to directly come sign their kid out.
Okay.
And I also wanted to add just on because there's a little bit of confusion around the lunches. So I just wanted to provide the board with this is an evolving thing. So it was brought to our attention that we were not able to provide the lunches as part of the USDA requirements. So our food service director reached out to the state to ask. They initially told us it was fine. And then when they followed up and checked with the federal level, with the USDA, they were told no, that we can't, but that the state still has on their website. So I just want to add that clarification, because if you look, so they are still checking on that. So they could not give us a definitive answer, which was one of our areas of concern of how to move forward with that. So we are waiting to hear back from the state. But my last understanding is that it's not permissible unless it's related to a curricular activity for an offsite meal. So what that means is if we were to take our students on a Westerville field trip for a history class, for example, then they could eat offsite. But if it's not related to a curricular trip, that they're not able to. So waiting on confirmation, we don't know the exact answer on that, but that's the latest that we've been heard. And I think the board's aware that previously they have been able to take meals from the cafeteria, including the ones that are free and reduced, with them in to-go containers. So that's kind of one of the issues at stake.
So basically, in this 2-week time period, assuming there is not a multiple suspension in it, and I won't be here to deal with that, but in this next 2-week time period, then as I understand it, the impact on LifeWise would be in order to continue the program as it somewhat exists, parents would have to come to the school and sign their children out. Parents would also have to pack a lunch. So basically, that's what it would be. Okay, so that would place at least a 2-week crimp in the program's operations, correct?
I don't have the exact date, but I think they were planning to start in September around the time of our next meeting, maybe the week before, so.
Okay, so it wouldn't be a full 2-week
Correct.
issue. All right. So it could result in, say, possibly a week delay. I'm just trying to work all of these things out because I want to be fair to these hundreds of students. I want to be fair to the construct of what we're doing. And I also understand that it is a requirement for us to make sure that we are operating legally. I think that the issues of legality and the issues of food service can be resolved fairly quickly. I would hope that we would be working not only with our attorney around those issues to develop appropriate language that meets the law, but also that we would work with LifeWise in order to ensure that they are engaged in helping to create a situation that works as well. So in delaying LifeWise implementation in September for approximately a week, in order to make that palatable to me this evening, I would want to know that we're going to engage with LifeWise on coming up with a solution.
We have met with them previously, and Board President Meyer was with us in that conversation. So happy to schedule another meeting after this to talk through what issues are.
On the lunch piece, can you just talk about, very briefly, I think it's really important that we take the time to figure this out, right? Can you talk about, we were contacted by USDA, correct? And so it was USDA and then we reached out to the state. I just want to make sure I have that.
No, thank you for asking that. Let me clarify. So it was brought to our attention that from a community member that they weren't sure that that was legal. So we wanted to look into that. And there was a little confusion because it was legal during COVID times. They kind of suspended some of the requirements around serving lunches in a non-congregate setting. So we were able then to look into where it was now.
Rules are back in place that didn't exist.
And quite frankly, the people at the state had to check because they were like, that's a great question. We haven't had that question in a while. So they reached out then and then told us it was okay. And then as they kind of dug in a little bit more, came back and told us it wasn't, but that doesn't align with what's on the website. So that's what we need to figure out. We don't have clear guidance right now.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. I want to make sure we straighten that out and kids get fed.
Yeah. So the motion is to pause, right? To pause for 2 weeks so we can do some more investigation and make sure, like I said before, all of our kiddos are being fed and taken care of. That's the idea.
Okay. Any other comments?
I'm still concerned about the possibility of multiple suspensions. That worries me on a policy approach to say, well, we'll suspend, then we're going to suspend, then we're going to suspend. To me, that's a good way to, whether it's this policy or any other policy, to provide a de facto way to stop something from happening. And I want us to be open and I want us to be very transparent. I want it to be really fair about people's rights under the law and people's expectations for the way the district handles its policy. So I understand exactly what you're talking about. I don't disagree with the need to look deeply into what's going on to answer the legal questions that we have. That's incumbent upon us. But I do want to be sure that in answering those legal questions, that we protect the rights under law that others have.
Okay.
So that's where I am.
Yep. Duly noted.
Other comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Marshall, you can call the vote.
Mrs. Davidson?
Yes.
Mrs. Valentine?
Yes.
Dr. Nestor Baker?
No.
Mrs. Altman?
Yes.
Okay, so I had to play that in its entirety because I wanted you to hear the dialogue back and forth and the manipulation that's beyond evident that's taking place here. You have to keep in mind, this was never even a question about this program before these demonic left-wing weirdos started whining about it. It was never a question. They've been feeding these children in an off-site location within these churches in the middle of the day when they attend LifeWise for years. They've been doing this for years. Never been a question. Now all of a sudden it's a legal question. Now all of a sudden it's are they going to be safe and are they going to be fed? And oh, by the way, if they're given food or they attend an off-site non-curriculum school-based activity in the middle of the day, then we can't give lunch to those children. That is a school lunch, in particular free and reduced lunch. This has never been a question in the past. This should show you how manipulative these people are. They get in a back room, they start asking questions. One of their evil lawyers comes up to the front in their meeting, again, behind closed doors, and basically says, well, here's how we can get around this, and here's how you can delay this, and here's how we can basically suspend this entire thing. Again, penalizing children for attending is also what they're doing in this entire thing too. This was also part of their excuse making. They're now basically saying that if they attend and it's a non-curriculum related thing, then it's not an excused absence, which means the parents have to show up and sign them out and then sign them back in, which everybody knows the parents can't do that because many of them are working. So it's quite literally a purposeful inconvenience for the families driven by the school district to keep these kids away from a Christ-related program. It can't get clearer that they are manipulating things to benefit them, but it's not really benefiting the school district. It's making them look like the demonic assholes they are. That's all it's doing. It's exposing them even more here. And this is like face value stuff. So again, I gotta say this too. For somebody to listen to this and say all of that's boring and this doesn't matter and who cares, go listen to another show then. Go listen to Libs of TikTok or watch Libs of TikTok's repetitive bullshit, and gay flag this and gay flag that nonsense, and go listen to Chris Rufo rehash how many companies are quote unquote woke. No one gives a shit. This kind of analysis is important from someone who's been in the business because I'm trying to explain to people that this is the business, regardless of where it exists. Again, these people are making excuses that were never excuses in the past. But because the mob, the left-wing mob, has complained, now they have to come up with excuses to cater to the left-wing mob while being left-wingers themselves. Make no mistake, I'm going to bring this up in their future board meeting. They will disassociate with LifeWise. They will not be associated with it. I guarantee it. They will make a vote to disassociate and cancel their affiliation with the program. They will piss off endless people. Endless people. And God willing, that will increase their unenrollment as a school district. It will decrease any chance they thought that they were ever going to get a levy. And it'll be game over after that. Every single board member, outside of Nancy Nestor Baker, who made a good vote to not suspend the ruling and to not delay it. She was the only one who said no. Everybody else said yes, so the motion passed. But for everybody, again, who was there, who voted, even the board president who wasn't there, who would have voted to suspend the whole thing anyway, it would have been a 4-1 vote. They've all put the nails in their own coffin. They're finished. They're completely done. They've exposed themselves as being demonic incapable of doing the job, completely unqualified, totally irrational, and then manipulators, which means they're liars. And they're not good at it. Now, do you think, again, that that's unique to just one school district? Absolutely flippin' not. It's every school district. It's everyone. Across the board, every single one of them. Again, you also heard in the dialogue when they were going back and forth, they were openly talking about, again, the lunch issue, when in fact, what's the big deal? If there are students who are attending who can pack their own lunch, then pack your own lunch. That's not a problem. But for those that eat the free lunch at school and they can't pack a lunch and or don't want to, I bet LifeWise could provide something for them to eat. They're a Christian organization after all. But what the school is saying is well, if you're going to go over there and you're going to hang out with them, we're not going to feed you. But we want to make sure you get fed, but you can only get fed if you stay here and you don't go over there, with those Christians and those Bibles and that Jesus guy. That's the manipulation. That's the real definition of what's going on here. And they're using children. Because let's face it, they're child abusers. They did gag them, after all, and make them all wear masks and demoralize them and beat them down for something that doesn't even exist. So, pulling the rug out from underneath them regarding the ability to eat, that shouldn't surprise anybody. That's who these people are. But notice how they try to phrase it like, well, we want them to get fed and we want them to be safe and we need to look into that because that's all we care about. No, you don't care about it. Because if you did, you'd have just left it alone. But you didn't leave it alone. Not to mention, if the Ohio Department of Education, Workforce and Labor, or whatever the hell it's called, if they're now openly telling the district that they can't feed these kids using free and reduced school-related lunch to an outside activity that isn't K-12 school curriculum related, why have they never done that again in the past? Why is it all of a sudden now an issue? Like I said earlier, it's an issue that was cherry-picked. They cherry-picked it to justify their position on pulling the rug out from underneath these students. All you're doing is pissing off everybody. Because this is what happens when the liberal snake eats its own tail every single time. Like I said earlier, LifeWise would do well to become their own school. Hell, I'd help them. I'd help them make one. I could do it with half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. But they would do well to create their own private school. You could hire volunteers. Maybe there's some stay-at-home parents who have been still sending their children to American K-12 schools. Maybe they can show up. Maybe those parents can bring their children. This is how you disassociate from the demonic government system. You let them expose themselves if you want to, which they always do, but then you have to walk away from them permanently because they're showing you who they are. And they're horrible people. And it's a horrible organization. K-12 schools are criminal organizations. They always are. They always have been. But everybody's temperature is up, and everybody wants to get more gay, and it's a giant gay-off to see how gay can we make these school districts become. And you can see what they're doing then. They're going after a morally, ethically sound program that's teaching the Word of God to children who are having excellent experiences with one another. Again, there were a lot of people who spoke at the lectern about the LifeWise program, talking about how it's helped their children come out of a so-called shell. Well, they weren't very vocal, and now they're very vocal. They didn't have any friends, now they have friends. They were getting picked on at school, but when they go to LifeWise, they don't get picked on. They feel like they're a part of something. Who's that really exposing in the negative? The school system. It's showing everybody that that's what the school system does. it divides, it humiliates, it discriminates, it puts people down, it's competitive when it shouldn't be, it peer pressures individuals to conform or else. Why in the hell would you want to do that? Why would you want to associate and have your children associate with such a thing? Like you've heard me say, leave it for the handicapped. Leave it for the physically handicapped and the mentally disabled. Literally and metaphorically and figuratively. Leave it for them. The ethically sound people of right mind and able-bodied need to leave these environments. And this right here, again, is a perfect case study as to why that has to happen. And they've just done themselves in, whether they know it or not. And they're so stupid, they don't even know that as board members in a school district, they've created a problem by failing to take a stand at the word go. This is going to haunt them for a long time. This is going to haunt them for a long time. And again, it has been said time and time again, and I'm certain it's in the Bible. Has to be. When you go after people who have been sent here by God to help children, things are not going to work out for you. They just won't. So with all that said, ladies and gentlemen, if you stuck through it, thank you. I hope the points have been made. I hope they're crystal clear. And make no mistake, there are a few school districts that I keep a close eye on. That's just one of them. But anybody can do this. You can examine your local board meetings and you can analyze what they're saying and what they're doing. And trust me, you'll get down to brass tacks as to what's happening here. This is the collapse of the American K-12 school district. It is financial. It is a moral collapse. It's an ethical collapse. It's a government-driven legal collapse. It's everything. It's all happening right now, all at the exact same time. There's no avoiding it. I love it. I can't get enough of it. With all that said, have a great weekend, everybody, and I'll catch you on Monday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.